any additions or corrections to the July 2020 minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Financial report, is there anything anybody has questions on there?
All loans are being paid as.
Looks like it, yeah.
Believe so. Okay. Move to approve.
Okay, motion to approve, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, okay.
I think we do have one addition, not to the finance report in and of itself, but just as long as we're talking about finances and things like that. Nancy's made me aware and talked to Nicholas too, that we have, the two EDA owned lots on Main Street are in a TIF district. So tax increment finance district. And apparently there's a negative fund balance in that TIF district for about $80,000. And in accordance with state statute, every year, you know, it's being charged interest as well. So she is requesting, I mean, two-part. Right now, she's just requesting that we, you know, defer interest because it's just gonna continue to accrue a negative fund balance until someone buys those. I think long-term, we wanna probably decertify the TIF district because the likelihood, to me, of somebody purchasing those lots, with a negative $80,000 fund balance is probably not gonna be realistic. If somebody did purchase them, we would wanna be able to offer TIF as a possible option. Right now, that really wouldn't be feasible, because it's in a different district. So, just something to be aware of, that she is asking for us to take a look at possibly, you know, defeasing that cost for the rest of the year, so. Anyway, just wanted to make you, I know, she said that it's probably mentioned before at EDA, but I wasn't aware of it until today, so.
So I don't know if we wanna do that today, or we can definitely add it to the agenda next time and have Nancy come and she can explain it a little further as well.
I would think we'd wanna just put it on next agenda to make sure we got
Yeah.
information, so we ain't just. Okay. All right, up next will be the EDA board seat. There's an application in the packet. Everybody have a chance to look at that? Any questions for that? Okay. If there's no questions, we'll look at the board to make a recommendation to either approve or deny the application. And then once we're there, we can, if it's approved, we'll forward it on to the mayor.
Did we have just one applicant?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
All our information is in there. So anybody make a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve her application. I do think that she hasn't exaggerated her qualifications. I do think she's lived here for a long time. I do think she fits the criteria and may have something new to add to our thoughts.
Okay. We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? I will make a second to approve. She seems like she qualifies, fits everything that we were looking for. So, any more discussion? All in favor of moving this forward to the mayor and council, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will forward that on.
So good. And I just have one comment just for the future as we do this, like, so people know what they're getting into, what we actually do here. You know, under her area, you know, what do you see the three most significant things for this board, committee, commission to address?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, fire station, the police station, you know, that we're gonna talk about economic development. That's kind of, you know, just so that people know what they're getting into, so when they think, oh, we're gonna go and I'm gonna be able to help with this. I don't think that's the case with Kathy, but
Right.
just for other people in general, that, hey, this is what this board does.
Right.
Within that scope, what do you think?
No, Nicholas and I did discuss that, when we read through her application. We felt like over a period of time, she'll learn the responsibilities of this board.
Yeah, I think she'll get it pretty quick,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
just in general, so they know that.
You can meet with her before she.
Yeah, I know Kathy.
If you're gonna move forward,
Yeah,
so.
so, thank you.
Okay.
Maybe the application needs to be looked at. Maybe we should have it more specific out.
Perhaps.
Yeah, got one for everything,
Yeah.
or maybe a little more description. Okay. Moving on to the business facade improvement grant.
Okay, so we have a couple of items, two for the 2020 and one for the 2019 program. So we've got an application from Full Circle Wellness for a sign. They're a brand new business in town, so they're looking to build their sign. The grant match is expected to be $222.50. I think that's a good project. We also have a request for reimbursement from Stage by Stage. They were really quick about getting this done, which I appreciate. The sign looks great. There's some images of the decals and the sign included in the packet. And then for the 2019 program, this is the last project we have with that program. It's Janice Court. Janice is a mural. There are images included. The request is for $2,000. I think the mural looks great. And I've also included the 2019 Business Facade Improvement Program spreadsheet for the program balance. So as you'll see, we have about $100 that we didn't spend, so overall the program came in under $10,000 as expected, so looking for approval on all of those with the EDA board as well.
And you had contacted the, media
Yep.
about possibly having someone come, and you contacted, KMT and, KL.
And the Dodge County Independent on doing a piece on the mural, because it's very present, it looks great.
I think KMT was there last week, so I talked to Carson when she was doing it, she said the DCI had talked to her about
Okay.
interviewing her, and she wasn't there when the news, I saw one news truck out there taking pictures, video of it, but there wasn't, she wasn't there when he was at the time.
So I also gave them Janice's phone number, so if they wanna get in touch
Yeah.
with Carson.
DCI is contacted.
Okay, great, yeah, that'd be a good piece to have in the news.
I'll mention she came in under budget.
Did she mention what I told her the other day?
About the, no, you're not the one who started the college from, South there, are you?
No, I
Oh.
just said maybe she should ask for a raise, but.
Oh.
Nice.
She said good luck.
Well, you can always ask.
Yeah, you know.
Okay. All right, so we'll do these one by one.
Okay.
The Full Circle Wellness application, is there any questions?
Move to approve?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. The Stage by Stage reimbursement, anybody got any questions on that? Hearing none, we'll take a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and the third one, the Board from Durst reimbursement request.
I'll abstain.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll go on to our 2021 budget.
Okay, so this is the proposed 2021 budget. I've highlighted the changes in green and yellow. So, the most significant change is instead of 20,000 for commercial programs, it's 10,000, because that's kind of where we see the facade improvement program expenses leaning. and we added $5,000 towards advertising, because I think, you know, between COVID and the Highway 57 project and, you know, possibly looking to advertise the southwest lots and maybe the downtown lots, we'll have further discussion on that at the next meeting. I think that's something the EDA should consider, increasing their budget on. And then everything else is just kind of minor changes, like, I can't read sideways, but like operating supplies, just a little more. And then engineering fees and legal fees, we reduced that because there doesn't seem to be.
So don't get in any trouble, all right?
Mm.
We're expecting the best behavior. Just because we haven't had those costs in the past, and usually when there's an engineering fee, it's usually a city project. So that's kind of where it comes from.
The other thing to note is this is in line with the council's guidance. You know, we are expecting a very flat budget year, so we, you know, it's not a large decrease, but, you know, it is about a $5,000 decrease, so it, you know, it does fall in that range, and, every department, I'm going through budget meetings all this week, and every department is being asked to do that now. Some of them are gonna be pretty grudging, but we did feel like, you know, partly the other reason is, and I've talked to a couple of you about, you know, we did receive money from the, CARES Act. I don't know if you were gonna just directly address that or anything like that, the Dodge County program.
In the coordinators.
Okay,
report.
well, I'll leave that. There's some stuff he's gonna talk about that may be able to allow us to hit some funding opportunities for folks this year still, which will take the place of some of the programs that we might be able to sponsor next year, so. Any questions anyone has on that budget? Any other areas you'd like to try and add, or you feel like more spending would be necessary, or cuts? Because, I mean, as I said, my biggest concern is for the 57 for downtown, because I know it's gonna be very impactful. It just is, that is what happens, is, we wanna make sure that we can get some radio ads or some newspaper ads, let people know that the businesses are still open, make sure signage is available so that we know what people can get in there, even if they have to come out, you know, take a right or left turn a little earlier off of, 57. You know, those folks are still gonna be open, we wanna try and make sure people can get down there, so.
Well, I mean, I guess the only other thing we've talked about in the past that we haven't done yet, we had been working on the EDA owned lot with the benches and stuff.
Mhm.
And that all got put on hold just, with
Yeah.
obviously the world getting kinda turned on its head. I mean, if we have extra money, we had talked about doing some improvements to that. I don't know if we feel like that's good or bad timing, but I just thought that was the only other thing that probably should get tossed in for discussion.
And you came in just after we were discussing, but Nancy's brought to Tim and I's attention that there's a TIP district on that, and it's just been accruing interest so the EDA, put out $50,000 or so, and now it's grown to about 80, and so that's just a loss. And so next meeting, we're gonna have that on the agenda item as to stopping the interest and possibly closing the TIF district, and then, hopefully looking to sell, and so that might factor into the advertising as well.
Sure.
So we can discuss the lots, I think, next meeting, we'll have a full agenda item on that, and so.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see what you're saying, the short term, parkland, kind of a thing, but to me, it is like what is the long-term plan with these?
Right.
I mean, in the long run, are we just gonna give them somebody for parking, or something like that? I don't really know, So, but yeah, we certainly can have it on the agenda, it's a full item to discuss.
Right.
And this budget's not in stone yet, so we're gonna have the council will set their levy at the end of September, it's due to the county. So we'll still have another meeting before we actually have to kind of semi-finalize this. Once we set that initial budget, or initial levy in September, the council can go down, but they can't go up. So it gives us an idea of where we're gonna be coming in at, so.
So we'll just put this on the next meeting to approve it?
Yeah, for the budget, yep. So, yeah, you guys have got it now, if you've got feedback, just let me know during the next month, before the next meeting, and, if you have comments today, absolutely, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, we're, the vast majority of our EDA budget is funded by the levy, you know, so there isn't a ton of additional revenue coming in, so. This is, when it comes down to it, this is pretty much the number the council will get, you know, 87,000 is what they would have to levy for the EDA basically going into next year.
Okay, we'll move on to the city-owned land in the southwest.
So Tim and I had been kind of discussing this land and perhaps that the EDA could come up with a plan for its future development. So I just kind of put every little bit of information that, you know, can guide that decision into the packet here. We've had some inquiries about the land from other parties. I know we've got a meeting later today with the Dodge County Youth Hockey. They're interested in buying a portion of that land to put some new arenas up. And so I can only imagine, say if we started advertising that land, that we would get a lot of inquiries in it. So it's, you know, I put a list of things for the EDA to consider, you know, in the long-term plan, they call for low-density residential, but actually, sorry, open park space, but there's low-density residential on the lot just below it.
Well, part of this was predicated, you know, Janice, you brought up at the last meeting, we wanted to talk about housing. And the question was, you know, how much can we really do? You know, this is one of the only parcels that we actually have any kind of control over, you know, I mean, if Tony Bigelow wants to build, he's gonna do it, and he's gonna buy it himself, and, you know, we're certainly willing to help him with stuff, but that's why we wanted to just say, hey, you know what, based on predicating what you said, where are we actually, what's the plan? Because, you know, if we need to start planning, because if we're gonna go to the state and say, hey, we're gonna get some deed money, you know, to help build a road, because we know that road access obviously is gonna be a big part of the accessibility of this, no matter what goes in. You know, or if we're gonna do a commercial development, you know, or residential or whatever, we have to identify the intended use, and, for us, you know, in the long term, after we get past COVID and hopefully the economy improves and things like that, this is gonna be a parcel that's gonna be hot. You know, already we know to the south and to the east, that parcel there just below Southport, that's gonna be developing very quickly. You know, that parcel is slated to come into lots in the next 18 months. So, and I mean, that could be between 40 and 60 lots, the South Point development. So you're gonna have additional population, which is gonna be coming down the south side of town, which means more cars, more traffic, more potential consumers for any kind of commercial business, whatnot. So, you know, it's just a matter of, that's kind of why we wanted to sort of flesh it out, and we want the EDA to have a project, and like, we don't have to decide today, but this is a good project for this year, next year. What are we doing, what can the EDA do to help, that kind of stuff too, so.
And I kind of subdivided the portions of the land, you know, because it doesn't all have to be one thing.
Right.
You could have residential, towards Manorville Avenue, and then, you know, maybe commercial on the other side, or vice versa. So it's a large, you know, chunk of land, and it can easily be subdivided into different uses. And so I threw in stuff from the comp plan on business parks, you know, how the city, you know, outlined their vision for business parks, what those would look like. And then some of the maps. I also threw in some of the sanitary, sewer, and water maps to give you an idea of what the current infrastructure is, and what might be some development issues, such as that ridge where they want to keep development within the lower areas of Casson, so that it's easier to service. And maybe that's one thing we can do, is we can have it surveyed, so that we have a better understanding of some of the capabilities of types of development out there. I believe it's also People's Energy is part of the provider there, perhaps?
Yeah, they have the Taylor Click.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's our, that's a problem, what's our life expectancy on the cemetery, as far as
Well, that's a
having
good
space,
question.
or, you know, since we
Yeah.
own the land around it, would we wanna look at that and project that out to where
Sure, well, I
we
mean,
wouldn't wanna
in its
land
current
like that?
format, I think that they have adequate space. You can sort of see on your map there
Yeah, you can see the-
on the east side, that is largely open.
Yep.
I do know in the terms of fundability, and I think you were there, but maybe I think you were there for the audit results, yeah, you were there. You know, we're basically at a 3 to 5 at max for when we have to start levying to
Right.
take that cemetery and actually put on the tax rolls, and I personally would disagree with doing that. However, you know, council does what they decide to do. To me, at the point when the funding is out, I would say that you probably would make it into a historical cemetery, which would mean we would still maintain it, but you might not have active burials anymore, which would allow us to save quite a bit of cost. It would become like a park almost, you know, a cemetery park. And, but that is certainly something we can take a look at. I mean, we're losing $50,000 a year, I guess, would be the best way I can explain it with the cemetery every year.
Right.
And I mean, once that fund balance is zero, you know, the taxpayers will get to decide whether they wanna levy an extra $50,000 to pay for a cemetery maintenance. I don't know if they're gonna wanna do that or not, so.
And that also kind of brings up the Parks and Recreation aspect of it.
What's the alternative? What
Pardon?
is the alternative?
On the cemetery?
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I mean, the alternative would be to make it into a historical cemetery, so you would end up at active burials there, and you would have, where it's just basically mowed and maintained as a park. So that would reduce your costs substantially, instead of having you need the upkeep and the perpetual care come in, some of those issues.
But you'd still have costs.
Well, you still have
You
some
will.
cost, you're right, you still have some cost,
Always.
but I think you'd be able to reduce, anytime the city owns property, there's certain costs, so you're absolutely right. It'd be more like a park though, as opposed to an active enterprise fund, so.
So I think, are you more asking, you know, so if you die in Casson, want to be buried in Casson, what's the alternative? If it wasn't there, is that?
No, I was thinking if you've already died and you're in Castle.
Oh, okay, I see.
Okay, we're gonna just dig you up.
No, it'll always be there.
Okay.
No, I don't think that'd be the plan.
No.
No.
Just like other
People allow
cemeteries
it.
that are no longer allowed, they're still there and maintained.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just have sometimes even on something like that, there's groups that take it over and service it, maintain it.
Yeah, sort of nonprofit
They used to do that.
organization or something.
You know, there's some.
Call their relatives.
Yeah.
That's where the cemetery
We're
fund came
taking
from, because there was a cemetery
grandfather out.
organization.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a real concern for lots and lots of cities and counties, because you're absolutely right, a lot of these churches and groups that used to do cemeteries
Don't wanna.
are giving them away, because they, you know, the problem they have is that the cemetery associations, private cemetery associations some of them have these big fund balances from back in the 50s and 60s. However, the restrictions that they have on what they can invest their money in, it has to basically be CDs or, you know, very low interest. So back in the 80s, when they were making 15% on a CD, the cemetery association was doing fine. Well, now, like I know the cemetery association in Blue Earth, they were losing $50,000 a year on their investments because they couldn't invest in anything higher interest. So, because they had costs they had to pay out, but the money they got in wasn't enough to cover in the money they had on hand. So every year they were losing, and so that's basically what happened here. Is the association kind of gave up the cemetery and said, here's the money we've got, make it last as long as you can, and because we're getting sub 1% interest rates, that money's getting eaten up faster than anything's accruing. Because I don't know that we don't have a ton of burials to begin with. Most people nowadays are cremated. That's the vast majority of what we're seeing. So you might only have 5 to 10 burials, and we're losing $1,000 in each one of them every time we do it, just because you can't charge enough. There just is no way to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's definitely something where a lot of counties are gonna get forced into taking these little rural ones over, and you're already seeing that, so. But we would wanna try and preserve that area, so when you see that, I mean, it is already screened quite heavily, so you do have trees that run along the sides, and we wanna make sure that we try and preserve the screening there, because that's important. But, that area on especially the northwest side, because of its commercial visibility to the highway, that is an area that I know we've had inquiries about. That would probably be an area we'll be taking a look at. Some of the other areas, so for possibly commercial or something like that. The other areas obviously being a little further off the highway, maybe more of what you were talking about last time, which is possibly some residential, possibly some workforce kind of housing or something like that. And there's gonna have to be some ponding too, because we know we have some wet areas down there too. We have some wetlands, especially on the east side, but.
And we've got an agreement on that.
And we do.
Said already.
Exactly,
Yes.
right.
So, I would say personally, this should be a priority.
Mhm.
So this is what the Economic Development Authority is actually here for.
Right.
And this is our priority, is development.
Mhm.
So I would say, as far as this group, come up with what you think, I mean, dividing it up, this is what we want for commercial,
Mhm.
residential, park, because the park down there is gonna be needed
Mhm.
for
Right.
everything we have down there. And we know we have ponding agreements in place on the east side, so we should see how much that would take up of our banks. I
Mhm.
believe that pond's gonna go on the city land, was part of the
Yeah, that's the
agreement
plan right now.
of the other one, so we know
And-
exactly how many acres we're dealing with.
And, you know, with certain types of developments, you can pair uses really well. So like if a hockey arena was built, you know, you could easily, you know, build a park next to it that would also serve as a space for hockey camps and that sort of thing. So, you know, there's a lot of things to consider when planning out how you wanna divide the space and what uses you want it, 'cause some of them are really complementary, some are less so. You know, if you ended up with some industrial park down there, you probably wouldn't want low-density residential right next to it, so.
Just something on a staff level, you could come back with an idea of
Well,
how you
I will,
want it.
I will just, as long as you're asking a question, it's a good question. I have talked with Nicholas about this, and my own view of it is probably three different components. I think that, some commercial space, partly because, having dealt with planning and zoning and some of these other meetings I go to, we know that there are a couple of businesses in town that are in historic spots where their business has been, but it isn't necessarily the best fit for that location anymore. And I will just bring up one which we had a lot of extended litigation with, which is it's the Wilker property. You know, we know that area is mostly gonna be in housing. However, and he has a perfect right to continue to operate there, and I mean, it's a good business.
Yes.
The concept would be helping some of these folks, to possibly have another option. Whereas if you said, okay, here's our, you know, space, here's your space to build a new structure, we can make this work where we can move someone more easily. We know that with the new comp plan, we're gonna have some more conflicts on the north side of town as well. Across from the high school, we have a couple of businesses which are historically, have been there, probably not as good of a fit now as they were when the development was only half as far up to Manorville. So we know that those conflicts are coming. It might be advisable to have opportunities and options for them to shift their business, because we wanna keep the businesses here.
Oh, yeah.
But it just may not be the best fit for that area of town anymore. And this happens all the time in bigger communities. It's not unusual at all. Look at Rochester. You know, I can remember when I was a kid coming to Rochester, the downtown was very different. You know, you had different restaurants, you had different businesses. The old, VFW right there by the you know, the center, you know, the, whatever, community center, the, civic center. I mean, now it's I don't know, 12, 15-story apartment, hotel complex. And that wasn't a big space, but now they've gone boom, you know, so I think that that's not unusual, and I don't feel bad about it, but having some land available for that. The other nice thing about some of these businesses is they're not necessarily high-intensity businesses, okay? So, for example, Mr. Wilker's property, you know, yes, he needs space, but it isn't that he has a ton of truck traffic, it isn't that he has a ton of constant coming and going like it would be for some other higher-intensity businesses. So what you could do is you could have a commercial component there, which then transitioned into, you know, the idea basically is to take this area as your retail. So if you had a restaurant, or you had because that's where they're coming off. So that's property we don't control, but fine. You know, if that's your retail strip, then you go with, you know, light density commercial. So if you have some plumbing supply or landscaping or trucking or something like that, would be a next section. The next section after that would be where you start to transition into more dense housing. You know, maybe workforce housing, where you do fourplexes, or you do some small apartment buildings, something like that. And then as you get away from the larger traffic, the idea would be to start providing for that single family, where you'd have some availability, possibly even, you know, half of that property could be put into single family, because that's where you're gonna start to see some of the cash flow. You know, if we can get the road built and paid for by deed money, which is they want you to build commercial, you know, viable businesses, but once the infrastructure and that's our problem, is the infrastructure has to get there. and the pond has to be built, and the road has to be built, and how do we pay for that? And you can't start building houses over here
Without-
until you've got access on the
Yep.
east side. So, you know, I think that, you know, to bring it back to your point, was kind of what we've envisioned this is kind of almost like a natural city, you know, retail, commercial, sliding into the housing component.
It's just a lot easier when you explain it, show it, than just show three
I
parcels.
mean, does that make sense at least?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
kind of what
Yeah.
we've kind of conceptualized.
Yep. And it makes it a lot easier to look at it that way than,
And I don't want people to feel like the city has to do all of this, because we don't. I mean, the big question that a developer is gonna have is infrastructure, and how am I gonna pay for that?
Mhm.
You know, if we had infrastructure there, Joe Schmo is gonna come over and they're gonna do the housing themselves.
yeah.
They're gonna do the commercial themselves.
we just gotta get the ball rolling.
Well, and I mean, the city provides that support. That's what our job is, to try and find a way to bring infrastructure.
Mhm.
Because that's the biggest cost that people are gonna have, is infrastructure. You know, they know how to do this way better than I do when it comes to actually building developments and things like that. Unless we want, you know, McCurran Estates down there, and then, you know, we can definitely, you know, no? Oh,
No,
okay.
they've already,
Take up for it.
No.
No, all right.
No more building.
Okay, roger that.
for a while.
Ever.
Maybe, obviously cart before the horse, but have there been discussions about, access to Marble Avenue?
What's that?
Have there been any discussions about access to, Marble Avenue? 'Cause you're
Marble
gonna need
Avenue.
something on the.
You know, I've discussed it with the
From
city.
this 26.5.
Yeah, I've discussed it with the city engineer, and as far as it's gone, is that he's indicated that they do have a ponding plan and an agreement. And, because we know that ponding, there's some real wet areas down there, and we'd have to get that water moved before we could start building anything. You know, I haven't talked about traffic counts or anything like that yet, so.
So I believe though, we can put the road in where we want it, we'll just have to
That's right.
acquire the land.
Yep.
But that patch that's private there on the east side,
Mhm.
when that was assessed for Manorville Avenue is all redone all the way to the south. Part of the assessment negotiations, whatever was, the assessment was assessed, but then the pond would go on our land.
Okay.
So, but there is room for access there, I think we just have to acquire that.
Yeah.
And it's a deferred assessment.
It's a deferred assessment.
Until
so
we
when
annex the
build it,
property in, right.
Okay.
Yeah, when we build it and annex it in, then he has to start paying
Yeah.
for it.
Okay.
One question I had is, with some of like the speculative planning and like especially with like talking about where retention ponds are gonna go, where you're gonna have street and like
Mhm.
how water or sewer connections are gonna work. I mean, we haven't used any of our engineering budget for 2020.
Mhm.
I mean, is that something we could, have Brandon kinda do one of like those like aerial view, like here's an idea as to like what some of those accesses would look like?
Yeah, let me just get back to that budget here, but yeah, I mean, I think that would certainly be a good use of those funds. It's certainly not a bad idea to start that planning if we're really serious about actually doing it. I just wanted to bring it to you guys because, I mean, obviously, in the long run, this is the property that we have to work with. So, yeah, this year we had,
3,000.
We had 3,000, and I don't know how far that'll get us, but at least get us a start.
Right.
And like you said, even if it's somewhat simple, we could say, okay, here's the concept design, the concept that we have, but, that's where we need your help, because I'm just talking, okay?
Mhm.
I'm just saying, here's what I thought of, but, you know, you guys have lived here a lot longer than I have, and you know better than I do what is prudent with this sort of, property and things, so.
I'll add, I do think, at least a piece of the where the parcel comes up and kind of comes just to where the highway frontage is.
Mhm.
I do think that top part there, probably most valuable is some kind of a retail style commercial thing, whether that be dealership or a store, whatever, but I think that part of it there, then transitioning, like you're saying, kind of back into housing as you get away.
Yeah.
But it does raise the question of, you know, if you have a frontage here and then another access point coming down, so really you end up with kind of two higher traffic directions. But anyways, I think otherwise, yeah, I guess I was envisioning exactly what you're talking about, it being kind of 3 chunks.
Okay.
And I think getting the engineering kind of basic understanding of the land, you know, where you should put a pond and where other development is more suitable, to get that out of the way is a good place to start as well. these will be ongoing discussions as well, you know, in each meeting as we present more information, the EDA will develop a better understanding of how they want to develop. And, you know, as we make it public that we're looking to develop this land, I'm sure we're gonna get a lot of inquiries as well.
You know, I think too, if we get into it and, you know, we have our initial aerial view plan from, Brandon or whoever we work with on that, we think, yeah, this is looking good, but we want more engineering plans. I mean, I think at that point, we might wanna, we could probably look at, I think Computer has that rural feasibility study program.
Sure.
We could take some of the planning costs, engineering costs out of that, 'cause I know I'd used that program for that kind of thing before.
Yeah.
I can get $5,000 for plans.
So is there anything you need from the board right now, other than just discussion for now, and
Well, discussion, you've got a lot of information in your packet to kind of digest and take a look at, but,
then bring it back next month?
Yeah, bring it back, and I mean, as the mayor noted, I mean, long-term, I think this is a very good project
Oh,
for
yeah.
the EDA to have, so.
Is there, I mean, I guess, is there anything, if I were to, I'm just wondering, if I were to make a motion that we request a quote or an estimate on cost from WHKS on doing some kind of a summary plan on accesses and what, you know, basically what infrastructure layout would look like.
Mhm.
Is there any information we need before we could at least get that estimate?
Well, I mean, if you're interested in, you would certainly make a motion, and I can talk to, I have several meetings out with Brandon on Thursday, and I can certainly bring it up to him and say, hey, here's what we'd like to see, can you give us an idea of what it would cost? Just in a very basic way, and then what we'll do is bring that back to the board. You can approve it, maybe even this fall, we can get started on doing some surveys and things like that, if that makes sense. I mean, to me, it does.
Yeah. I'll make a motion that we request that estimate.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, we request the engineer to do some basic numbers on this. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will move next to our coordinator's report.
So I've collected some of the utility metrics, but, it kind of became a lower priority, but I'm still going to get around to organizing those into a more formal document. Cass and Maynardville collaboration, I know my counterpart is talking with their EDA tonight or tomorrow, and then we'll come up with a more concrete plan that we can present for, a dual meeting between each EDA board. The office needs survey that's been sent out, we mailed out around 120 letters to residentially registered business addresses. We've gotten 8 responses so far in the survey, so hopefully some more come in. There was a news story, which will, you know, hopefully raise awareness. It was a nice little piece by KINT. So I'll have more information on that at the next meeting, because I'm sure survey responses will probably stop coming in within 2 weeks' time, so. Open EDA board seat, we went over that. Budget, CARES Act funds. So Dodge County is expected to enter into an agreement with CEDA to create and manage a small business relief fund established with CARES Act funds. I've attached the guidelines for later in this packet for you to take a look at. So Dodge County is going to commit $700,000 to the program. That's around 30% of the total funds that they've received, to make grants of up to $10,000 available to Dodge County businesses. And the county administrator has kind of entered into a handshake agreement with each of the cities to commit 10% of their funds to the program, just as you know, a way to show commitment and to kind of make Dodge County feel a little safer about distributing all of these funds to businesses in the county. So that's something I've talked to Tim about, and we'll probably take a resolution at the council to pool those. I'm discussing with all of the cities as a Dodge County EDA staff as to how to best pool those funds, and I think a resolution to write a check to Dodge County, put them in that fund. So we hope to have that open pretty soon. I know, one of my vice presidents is working on the guidelines, and we've encountered some questions from cities, and so we're incorporating that feedback. You know, one city asked, what if we don't commit the 10%, does that mean our businesses and the city won't be able to apply for the funds? And they will be, like, it's not gonna be opt-in or you're out, so, and as part of that, each city EDA staff will be doing the outreach in the cities, and then at the county level, they'll be doing the outreach to the county businesses. And all of those applications will come back to the county, and we'll review them in October, and each city will get a list of businesses from their geography that applied, so that they can check for, you know, ordinance compliance and those sort of things. I don't think the cities will have a veto power, but they will be able to raise concerns with any businesses that they see on the list if they think that there might be some bad faith applications in there. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, but we'll have more information by the end of the week once Dodge County moves forward with this program and contract with CEDA, so.
Alright, next we'll move on to our city administrator's report.
So you've got my report in the packet, and I'm not gonna belabor it, but, just so you do know, and if you get people that ever ask you about it, we do have many energy assistance programs here at the city, so if someone is struggling with utility payments, we certainly suggest and recommend that they get connected with us. We can try and get them lined up for some energy assistance. Other than that, you have the report on hand. We're still following the state's budget issues. Right now, $4.7 billion deficit over the next biennium is what's projected, and could have a substantial impact to the city's LGA levels going into 2020 and 2020 or 2021. So we'll just have to see what comes out of that. So one other thing, we will be looking at doing the EMS committee is meeting on Wednesday, and I'll be bringing it up there, and then the council meets next week. That we'll be talking about potentially utilizing some of the CARES Act money for a community mental health program of some sort. Something a couple of council members have brought up to me, and so we know that we had some unfortunate things happen the last couple of weeks, and over the last 5 to 10 years, it's been kind of rough for some of the young people, and with this COVID, we know it's affected a lot of people. And even just wearing the mask all day, to be honest with you, I think it kind of wears on you a little bit. And for a lot of folks, that's a hard thing, so I'm not sure what that's gonna look like yet, but, the council certainly, you know, they're on the game, and they wanna know what we can do to help people, so. Any questions anybody has for me?
Any other business that we need to discuss today? Hearing none. Items for September?
So I've got TIF, the EDA budget final, the Southwest Land, continued discussion on that. If the mayor moves forward with appointing Kathy, we'll have her at the meeting. The co-working survey results and the CARES Act, and if there's anything I missed, let me know.
Okay. And I will take a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Is our French bakery ever gonna open?
They're
trying, he wanted.
dealing with the inspection stuff right now.
Yes, they want an outline of the plumbing.